almost half of school shootings are over in the first few minutes. We need to prevent it before it happens. "19 students and 2 dedicated teachers." Today we're here doing yet another show on a senseless mass shooting in America. This one at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. 2 teachers and 19 children are dead. They left for school in the morning and are never coming home. In the second most deadly school shooting since Sandy Hook. When this happened at Newtown 10 years ago, we called it unthinkable. Now this cold reality has happened again. 10 years ago, I spoke to devastated parents whose children were injured, traumatized, and murdered for absolutely no reason. Children who went to school with their whole lives ahead of them, and then were just dead. We spoke about the change that needed to happen, changes in laws, changes in mental health checks and support, changes in how to spot and handle warning signs. And in these past 10 years, I've continued to speak to victims, parents, and advocates each time this has happened. Where does it happen? We never know. Churches, supermarkets, schools. When is enough enough? Today, I'm dedicating this show to speaking about how to stop this. And the question is it possible? Is it possible to stop this? I believe there are things we can do. And I certainly believe it is past time that we do it. And I know many, if not all Americans, share with me that belief that we do what we can, that we do what we have to keep this from happening repeatedly over and over again. I think you're going to be shocked at just how frequently this is happening just on school campuses. We're going to talk about that today. But first, let's take a look at what happened in Uvalde and the lives lost.
We come on the air tonight after another mass shooting in America.
A South Texas town brought to its knees after a teen gunman opens fire inside an elementary school.
According to police, just after recess is when it happened. Peach slices, ham sandwiches waiting on the school lunch menu. And that's when 18-year-old Salvador Ramos walked into Robb Elementary School. He was armed with an AR-15 style rifle, also had high-capacity magazines with him, according to police. Weapons, by the way, that he bought legally this very month on his 18th birthday.
The day of the shooting, Ramos had a fight with his grandmother over failing to graduate. She was shot in the face and is in critical condition. Ramos fled the home in his grandparents' pickup truck, crashing into this gully. Surveillance video shows him running into the school seconds later. The massacre was about to begin.
Authorities tonight confirming that the gunman was in the elementary school for an hour or more before he was shot and killed.
The anguished cries of desperate parents after the massacre at Robb Elementary. Pleading with police to rescue their children. An elite Border Patrol team moving behind a shield entered the classroom and killed the suspect.
We hid behind desks and chairs. Well, we were scared, and the teacher started telling us we can pray. And I was happy I didn't get shot.
For 40 minutes, his mother had no idea if he was alive.
This heart-wrenching photo shows 11 of the 19 children who died.
Now, I'm sure you have been saturated with information about what happened in Uvalde, Texas. And the thing that I think we all need to realize is that this doesn't just happen to someone else. This doesn't just happen in another town. This doesn't just happen to some community we read about. It can happen anywhere. And in this town, 18-year-old Salvador Ramos did the unthinkable. And like is the case in so many of these situations, he telegraphed what he was going to do. There were Instagram posts with him with firearms, deadly firearms, one being an AR-15. He sent some private post. He said, "I'm going to shoot my grandmother." His second post, "I shot my grandmother." His third post, within 15 minutes of the first, "I'm going to shoot an elementary school." 15 minutes later, en route, he crashes his truck in a concrete ditch near Robb Elementary School. We've heard what AR-15s are. You can do a tremendous amount of damage when you can put out that much firepower. Now, I don't care where you stand on the Second Amendment. Ask the common sense question, what does an 18-year-old boy need with that kind of a weapon? What does any civilian need with that kind of a weapon? And if a child, an 18-year-old boy, can get his hands on that, a 15-year-old, 14-year-old can get their hands on that, do they have the maturity to manage it? You're looking right now at the ammunition that this particular weapon put out. This is a serious round of ammunition that will do tremendous damage to whatever it hits. Now, again, I'm not going to go back over all of these tragic details with you, but this young man enters the back door and makes his way down a series of short hallways before he enters a classroom where he opens fire with this rapid fire weapon, is what we now believe, and kills 19 students and 2 teachers. How long did it take before someone responded? That's in controversy right now. Parents are frustrated, saying police officers did not respond fast enough. Parents were talking about charging the school themselves, trying to get something done because they knew that their children were in there. It's reported that a Border Patrol officer ultimately shot and killed Ramos. It's also been reported that he legally purchased 2 AR platform rifles on 2 separate dates in May, reportedly around $3,000. Where did he get that money? Did somebody buy these for him? Why was he in possession of these weapons? Most people greatly underestimated how much of a problem this is in America today. And I'm not talking about mass shootings. I'm just talking about school shootings right now. And I want to tell you that the trend is getting worse. In 2021, there was an all-time high number of school shootings. Now, it depends on how you define a school shooting. And I want to tell you that the Center for Homeland Defense and Security K through 12 school shooting database defines it this way. They define a school shooting as any incident where a firearm was brandished or fired at a school. Doesn't mean somebody was killed, but a gun showed up at a school and was brandished. And from January 1st through December 5th, the database reported 222 incidences. Now, if you divide that up by the number of average weeks in a school year, which is, we'll pick 36, that's 6.16 incidences per week. Now, if your jaw's not on the floor, I would be surprised. This is clearly headed in the wrong direction. What's it going to take for us to wake up and say we have to do something? More than 311,000 students have experienced gun violence since Columbine occurred. That's according to the Washington Post. This is out of control. So the question is always, well, all right, let's identify the profile. Who's doing this shooting? Sadly, I can tell you there is no profile, and we don't have the psychological tools to identify who's going to be a shooter. But there are some commonalities. There are some indicators, and I'm going to share with you what some of those are. These are often current or former students of the school they go to shoot up. It's not always the case, and they are often in some type of mental, emotional, or social crisis. And being bullied was common. Now, do they go back and shoot the bully? Occasionally, But typically that's not the case. Shooters go and aggress not against their transgressors, but against surrogates. They go shoot against somebody that's just a stand-in. They just go shoot somebody that is available, somebody that they aren't threatened by. These are people that have experienced observable, now I want to emphasize observable, mental health symptoms in three main categories: psychological, behavioral, and neurological. I'm emphasizing observable because people notice that they're behaving unusually. About half of them have received one or more mental health services, so they've come to the attention of mental health providers, so they're not completely in the dark and about these people. They are on somebody's radar. Most typically, it's depression or suicidal ideation. Some have anxiety. A much smaller percentage than you would think present with anger. They're depressed. They've been shunned by society. They've been through some type of rejection experience. And our number one need is acceptance. Our number one fear is rejection. And they've had some trauma in that regard. And they very frequently have negative home life factors such as divorce, drug use, someone in the family, a mother or father, have criminal charges, and domestic violence is common. So they exhibit these concerning behaviors, and that contradicts the myth that, oh, it's the nicest guy, it's the last person I would have ever thought of. That's not true. And here's a very troubling element. They're often the product of the contagion effect. Now, what do I mean by that? They're inspired by other school shooters. I say that's particularly troubling because when you see what has happened in Uvalde, that predicts that it's very likely that there's going to be a repeat of this in the near future. Someone out there that is really desperate, really tragic, is going to see what has happened here, and they're going to become obsessed with it, and they're going to react to it. Maybe in a week, maybe in a month, who knows? And one of the most confounding things about this is they often tell others what they're going to do before they do it. Last year, we covered another shocking school shooting that happened just days after Thanksgiving. On November 28, 2021, 15-year-old Ethan Crumley walked into Oxford High School in a Detroit suburb and shot and killed 4 students. Some students actually stayed home because they said they knew what was going to happen and they didn't feel safe going to school. Now, this crime not only stood out at the time as being the deadliest school shooting since Parkland, but for being the first where a shooter's parents have been charged with crimes linked to the shooting.
They basically gave him a license and permission to kill. Did they know the gun was in the backpack? Did they know the plan, what he was going to carry out? Why not bring him home if there's trouble?
Isn't their job to know where the gun is? If the gun is missing from home and their child is being called in at school and he's drawing pictures of bullets and blood, and they say, "Where's our gun?" and he was shooting it the day before, isn't it endemic upon a parent to say, "Wait a minute, this isn't a coincidence"? And we also heard about what happened from Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard. Sheriff, when you find out about this in this case and in most cases, you intervene once something happens, right?
The school district officials did interview the subject the day before and the day of the tragedy, and we were never brought into those meetings. And that would have triggered the protocols that we have in place. And that is that if there's concerning behavior, the first thing we do is determine if there's a threat immediately. I'm sad to say, we sit here today, we've had more threats today. If you make a threat, even if it's not real, if you think it's a joke, it's not. If you have no intention of carrying out a threat, it's still a crime.
The shooter charged through the doors of Uvalde's Robb Elementary School, opening fire just after 11:30. Armed, law enforcement says, with an AR-15 assault rifle, high-capacity magazines, and a handgun.
And we have learned that the gunman illegally purchased 2 assault rifles and almost 400 rounds of ammunition earlier this month for his 18th birthday.
Another very powerful weapon. And by the way, these weapons are very expensive. I think in this case, there were reports that the gun cost close to $1,800. And you have to ask yourself, where does this kid get money for an $1,800 assault rifle? And when you talk to the family, the grandfather says he knew nothing about it.
Consternado, sorprendido por todo esto. Sí, por no esperaba yo.
Could you give us any insight into his
Not
state
really.
of mind? When's the last time you spoke to him?
I speak to him daily.
You know he had guns in the house?
No? I didn't know. I get up at 5 o'clock, leave, come back.
He didn't know that the child had this. And look, I'm sorry, but if you have a child that's building up an arsenal, it's your job to know. You need to know what your child is spending money on and where they're getting that kind of money. There were 2 rifles apparently bought in the Uvalde shooting. And we don't want to focus on just statistics and firearms and weapons and forget what's on the other end of that rifle. What's on the other end of this tragedy? It may just seem like, firearms and guns and violence. But let's not forget the humanity. Some of the children, and we are talking children here, 9, 10-year-old children in Uvalde. One of them speaking to a local news outlet, KENS5, in Texas, said, "When I heard the shooting through the door, I told my friend to hide under something so he won't find us." He said, and I quote, "I was hiding hard. And I was telling my friend not to talk because he's going to hear us." The boy shared heartbreaking details about what happened in that room. He said, and I quote, "When the cops came, the cop said, 'Yell if you need help.' And one of the persons in my class said, 'Help!' The guy overheard and he came and shot her," the boy said. The cop barged into that classroom and the guy shot at the cop, and the cop started shooting. He said that once the shooting stopped, he came out from under the table. "I got out with my friend. I knew it was police because I saw the armor and the shield." It's a 10-year-old child. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. Now, we've talked about a couple instances where the individual apparently purchased the guns. And in Texas, for example, you're not permitted to possess a firearm if you're under 18. Many of these school shooters are under 18. So where are they getting the guns? Research tells us they get these guns at home. They get these guns when they are not properly secured. So you cannot tell me that these families don't know that they have someone in their family having a problem fitting in, coming into conflict with authority. They should be concerned with depression, they should be concerned with suicide, and they should be concerned with having guns readily available to someone with that mindset, even if they are just concerned with the young man shooting himself. But in so many of these instances, we find that they simply walked into another room of the house and picked up a gun that was readily available. Now, what am I saying here? These shootings can be stopped, but it doesn't do any good if it just raises awareness and everyone is heartbroken and sends their prayers. Please do that. But along with doing that, we need to write to our congressmen, to our senators, state and federal, and insist that there needs to be a program for universal threat assessment. There needs to be a protocol where we add a crisis response team. If so many people hear that something like this is going on, why aren't they doing anything about it? They're not doing anything about it because they don't know what to do. They don't know who to call. They don't know what to say. They don't want, if there's somebody that they think, oh, this is a dangerous individual, they certainly don't want to irritate that person. They don't want to feel like, hey, I ratted them out, I tattled on them, now they're going to be mad at me, so I'm in danger. We need to have a situation where we can give students an anonymous, protected way to report concerns, to report a post on Instagram, hearing something in the lunchroom where they can report that and someone can reach out to that student and find out, do they need help? And do they fit a profile? Do they have a home life that is tumultuous? Are their guns easily accessible inside the home? Are all of those factors there that make up a volatile situation? Because make no mistake, we have to focus on prevention, not intervention. Why? Because almost half of school shootings are over in the first few minutes. If there's an active shooter, of course you want to call 911. But the truth of the matter is, even if you have an officer on site, that officer is likely to react to the shooting, not stop the shooting. That means we need to prevent it before it happens. If that armed guard is at one end of the hallway and the shooter is at the other end of the hallway, a lot of death can be dealt before even a responsible officer can go into action. You can see 44% of attacks are 1 minute or less, another 24% are 1 to 2 minutes. So you've got 68% of attacks are 2 minutes or less. So having a guard on campus, unless they are standing real close to that attacker, they're going to be reacting to what has already happened instead of preventing it from happening. Do I think there should be an officer on campus? Of course there should be someone there, but we need to put at least as much effort in preventing that shooter from ever picking up that weapon, and that means there has to be a system where they are identified by the system, where somebody has a place to go, someone to tell. Colorado has such a program called Safe to Tell. It's a statewide anonymous reporting tool which accepts tips 24/7, and they have had 19,861 tips in the 2018-2019 year. This gives them the opportunity to react before someone picks up a gun and steps on campus. It could be something that we can look at. And if you want to see it, it's at www.safetotell.org. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you about, because I've been asked this a lot, is what do you say to your children?
9-year-old Andrea Herrera used to play every day with her stepbrother, Jose Flores.
He would always say, I want to be a cop so I could protect all these other people and all the bad guys.
Now, these toys are all she and their little brother Jaden have left.
What does that make you think about?
I mean, it's just sad because the fact that he wanted to be a cop and he didn't have the chance to be it.
In this instance, fortunately, we're coming up to the end of the school year for many school systems, but not everywhere. And whether your child is going to be attending more classes or whether they're not, you've got to think through what to tell your children. And the first thing I want to say to you is, do not assume that your children know about this, because they may not. But if they don't know about this, I'm not sure that I would talk to them about this. And the flip side of that is, well, if I don't, what if one of their friends does? Wouldn't I rather control that conversation before it's visited upon them by their friends who may traumatize them? That is a risk. And you might want to talk to your friends' parents about this and come up with a plan. If you make the decision to talk to your child about this, then you want to do it in an age-appropriate way. And that term gets used a lot but never defined. So let me define that. You want to define that based on their questions to you. Ask them what they know. Listen very carefully to the words that they use and meet them where they are. Don't ask them to meet you where you are. If they say, well, I heard something happened at another school and some children were hurt, that's the level you want to discuss this with them at. If they say, I saw something on the internet or TV where somebody murdered 19 children, then, okay, again, you want to ask questions. Well, what does that mean to you? What do you know about that? Let them tell you what their construct is of murdered or killed or hurt. Let them. Don't assume that they understand the meaning of all those words. It doesn't happen very often. There are people that love you and care about you, and we keep a really close eye on everything that's going on. And if you ever see anything that makes you uncomfortable or that worries you in any way, then you tell your teacher and you tell mom and dad. And when this is being wall-to-wall covered, I wouldn't leave my television on and let them see things that they could overinterpret or overreact to. Now, am I suggesting that with young children you downplay this and not emphasize the gravity of it? Yes, I am. I don't think that you want to ask children to deal with adult issues or introduce to them things over which they have no control. Now, for older children, you want to ask them what their questions are. And again, reassure them that you are in close contact, you're keeping an eye on things, and make sure that's true. Don't go running up to the school with your hair on fire, hysterically demanding to know what the security protocols are, but have an intelligent conversation with your school. Are they adhering to proper protocols? Is there proper security? Make sure that people aren't thinking, oh, this would never happen here. But make sure that you have in mind what you're going to say to your children if you're asked this question.
People from across Uvalde and beyond gathered to mourn the lives lost.
As we say goodbye today, we want to honor the 19 innocent young boys and girls and their 2 brave and loving teachers who all lost their lives in this terrible, senseless tragedy. Ellie Garcia.
She was very sweet. She was very happy and very outgoing.
Uzziah Garcia. Neviea Bravo. Maddie Yelena Rodriguez.
She was charismatic, smart, bright, beautiful, happy.
McKenna Lee Elrod. Xavier Lopez. Tess Mata. Annabelle Guadalupe Rodriguez. Rogelio Torres. Alethea Ramirez.
She was just a young girl full of life.
JC Carmela Luevanos. Jayla Nicole Seguero. Jacqueline Cazares.
She loved to do music. I loved to be around family. You know, trying to help out anybody she could.
Miranda Mathis. Ileana Cruz Torres. Jose Flores Jr. Alexandria Lexi Ania Rubio. Layla Salazar. Amerijo Garza. And their 2 brave and loving teachers, Eva Morales and Irma Garcia.